We did it. We made it. It's OTA day. The Baltimore Ravens take the field, and we talk about players to watch coming up next on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every single day. We're available on all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe, and in audio form, where you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We're a 5-day-a-week Ravens show, so we bring you Ravens news, analysis, and updates every single weekday. Plus, we have bonus episodes to go live after every Ravens game and every single piece of Ravens big news as well. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And it is OTA day. We have made it. The Baltimore Ravens are taking the field, and it feels so good. This will be the Ravens' first day of voluntary OTAs, and they'll have a handful of these throughout the next couple of weeks. Obviously, today till Thursday are their first 3 of voluntary OTAs. Then they'll take the field again June 3rd, June 5 and 6, and then June 9 and 12. And the mandatory minicamp starts the week after that. So we're going to dive into players to watch throughout the entire course of OTAs. Guys who I think could potentially make big impacts on the team this season. And I'm not going to mention names like Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Roquan Smith. These are more so contributors that aren't necessarily star level, guys that could maybe make underrated impacts this season. I'm not talking about stars on today's show here. Plus, we don't know if the stars are going to show up. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. We'll talk about that a little bit more as the show goes on too. But we're going to do offense in the first part of the show, defense in the second part of the show. We'll throw special teams in there, obviously, too, because that's a pretty big storyline here in Baltimore with Justin Tucker's departure. And then in the final part of the show, I'll just kind of go over expectations and kind of what I expect from this whole OTA process, because, again, there's only so much you can take away from OTAs, but we will be talking about those takeaways every day here on Locked On Ravens. So let's just start off on the offensive side of the ball. We'll go through it here, and I'm honestly going to throw out a guy's name that might shock some people in terms of like, hey, Kevin, why the heck are you talking about this guy? I think that Cooper Rush is someone that I'm actually kind of excited to watch here. And if Lamar shows up, obviously, like the stars, that's one thing, but I'm not focusing on those guys today. Cooper Rush is a high-end backup, right? And you might be thinking, Kevin, why do you care about a backup? Well, I'm excited to see Cooper Rush get some first-team reps to see what he is and who he is, because of the Ravens in their backup position. You know, they had Tyler Huntley for a while. Obviously, RG3 was there for a little bit. Josh Johnson was their guy last season. But, you know, in the event that the Ravens need a guy to be the backup, you know, I don't think Josh Johnson was inspiring a lot of confidence last season, right? Tyler Huntley had to step in for Lamar, and while, you know, he had like some level of a floor, the ceiling wasn't very high for Tyler Huntley. Cooper Rush can go out there and he can win you some games, and those games won't look like they did, in my opinion, with Tyler Huntley. So I'm just excited to see what they have in Cooper Rush. Like, if I'm being honest here, he's a high-level backup that can maybe provide some value to them if Lamar, and knock on wood, this does not happen, but if he has to miss some time in the Ravens, and this is my conversation, because if you remember, there was a big whole controversy with the Cooper Rush signing. It wasn't a minimum contract. They gave him a big deal. That Cooper Rush controversy was, why would you pay big money for a backup quarterback, or, you know, big money for backup quarterback standards, I guess. And the answer to that is, if Lamar has to miss, let's say, the end of September through the end of November, you want a guy that can go out there and keep your season afloat. Because if the Ravens, let's say Lamar misses 8 games, if that backup goes 1-7, Lamar comes back and your season's done. Doesn't really matter at that point. Where if a backup can go in and go 5-3, 6-2, right? You're still in it when Lamar gets back. So I think that it was a fine signing. You know, I didn't really understand the outrage, or, you know, there were people on both sides of it where it was like, oh, this is the best signing ever, and then, oh, this is the worst signing ever. I thought it was fine. So I'm excited to see Cooper Rush. I'll plant my flag on that. Running back wise, though, this is someone I want to get into a little bit. Keaton Mitchell is someone I have my eye on for sure, right? Obviously, Keaton coming back from his injury last season, and it takes certain guys certain amounts of time to trust their body, figure out, oh, can I make this cut? Can I do this thing I used to be able to do really effectively? And sometimes guys can come back just like that, right? Snap of the fingers, and they can perform really well. Other times they might feel that they're there physically, but it's the mental aspect that's holding them back. And so sometimes the year after coming back from a significant injury, that year doesn't really look the same. And so for Keaton, he wasn't given a ton of opportunities. I like that he was able to return kicks towards the end of last season. But I think that this is truly the okay, Keaton is back tour. Like, this is the Keaton is back year, in my opinion. And I'm excited to see that. So for Keaton being on the field, hopefully him being there and being able to, just show what he can do. Because again, you look at what OTAs actually are, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in the expectations part of the show, but there's no live contact here, right? You're going to get the 7-on-7s, the 9-on-7s, the 11-on-11s, and that's what I'm excited to see. But, these guys these aren't like contact drills. So it's the ramp up process. But to me, having Keaton maybe make some cuts in the open field and figure out, okay, hey, I'm back now. That's something I really want to see. Rashod Ali is also somebody that, the Ravens, I'm not sure they keep 4 running backs. In fact, I would not if I'm them, but it's possible they do if Rashod Ali makes them do it. So could be a big opportunity for Rashod Ali to make a name for himself, because right now, Derrick Henry, Justice Hill, and Keaton Mitchell, those 3 are not giving up their roster spots. So we'll see how that plays out. Wide receiver-wise, I know Tez Walker is a guy that's drawn a lot of excitement here, especially heading into year 2. We saw him show flashes of that potential last season. And, for me, Tez and honestly LeJohntay Wester, rookie, second-year guy, they're not going to be expected to play these big roles, especially with Zay there, Rashod, Bateman, and obviously them bringing in DeAndre Hopkins, who, by the way, if he does show up to voluntary OTAs here, I'd be super excited to see him on the field for the first time in a Ravens uniform, because that's been something we've been talking about on this show for years. So to finally see it happen, see him on the field in Baltimore, that's going to be awesome. But, some of these guys that, again, in the case of an injury, and knock on wood again, well, knock on wood, it does not happen. But if it does, you should feel confident in the guys behind. And I think that when Zay went down last season for the playoffs, you didn't feel confident in your depth. Where I think this season, if Tez can take a step, if LeJohntay can show that he is not just a returner, and he's not. I have full belief in LeJohntay, and I see him. I watched his tape. Like, he is a beast from the slot. Those guys can prove a lot as the OTA period, mandatory minicamp, training camp goes on, so that you can put them in certain spots on the field, even when everybody is healthy. You can give D-Hop a break. Like, those things are really important, especially for those vets, right? Where Nelson Aguilar being the number 3 last season, losing Odell was tough, and it's a difference. And look, Nelson had awesome plays in Baltimore. I'm not trying to say Nelson was bad in Baltimore. He wasn't, but his 2023 compared to 2024 was different. He was much better in 2023 in a lesser role. I have a lot more confidence in D-Hop, Tez Walker, and LeJohntay Wester, plus Tylan Wallace, by the way. Let's not forget about Tylan. Tylan is awesome. He's a jack-of-all-trades guy, lunch pail guy, shows up in the big moments. Tylan is someone I want to see have a bigger role this season. And that's honestly over guys like Tez and LeJohntay Wester. But the reason I'm not mentioning him here is because I have full belief in Tylan already. Like, I think that if he gets a bigger opportunity, he will produce in that opportunity. But I want to see what Tez Walker has. I want to see what LeJohntay Wester has. And you know what? Tight end wise, I want to see what Charlie Kolar has a little bit. I do, because we've been talking all offseason about Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, but people underrate Charlie Kolar, in my opinion. Working hard as a blocker. The helmet, we might have to work on a helmet for him. If you've seen his helmet, it's a big helmet, unconventional, I guess. But so I guess that's just style points for Charlie. But I feel like, to me, he's someone that can have a bigger impact this season. I don't know what the split's going to look like between Mark and Isaiah. That's a different conversation. But those are the guys that are getting all the attention. Charlie's somebody that I think does deserve more love. Now, offensive line, look, we know the conversations. We know who we're looking at. It's Daniel Falele. It's Andrew Voorhees. It's guys like Ben Cleveland. Unfortunately, Emory Jones not going to be able to participate here with his injury. But then you look at some of the other depth pieces that they could be looking at here, like a Joe Noteboom, who is expected to be maybe one of their swing tackle guys. But obviously, I think all eyes right now are on that trio. It's Falele, Voorhees, and Cleveland. And so, again, with the no live contact, it's tough to gauge a little bit from the trenches, offensive line and defensive line, which we'll talk a little bit about in the second part of the show. But, I think just how these guys are coming into OTAs, if they do show up, where, Daniel Falele, we've seen some of the workout videos and pictures of him, trying to work on his body a little bit. We'll see if that comes to fruition and he shows up, and we'll see. We'll see how the speed looks. So, again, there's only so much you can take away, but everybody's going to be talking about those guys. Roger Rosengarten year 2 is exciting. It's going to be interesting with that guard spot, though. Both guard spots, to see who wins it, who ends up pulling ahead, because there are so many different outcomes. And, again, it's OTAs are the first step in that journey. So coming up in the second part of the show, we will move on to the defensive side of the ball, talking about some players to watch there for OTA. Stay tuned, a lot coming up on the show. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and honestly, these have been the best NBA playoffs I think I've watched in a really long time. We're in the conference finals right now. Thunder and Wolves. Thunder are up 3-1 in that series, and the Pacers have the same opportunity to go up 3-1 against the Knicks, but a team doesn't want to win at home. Obviously, Indiana goes to New York. They take 2. Now the Pacers, they lose game 3 to New York at home. Pacers right now at home, they are 2-point home favorites over the Knicks. I like that. I'm going to go Pacers again. I like Tyrese Halliburton. And if you're looking to cook up a same game parlay, I'm still looking at the overs for guys like Halliburton, Aaron Nesmith, maybe even a guy like Andrew Nembhard over in Indiana. So if you're looking for some fun and new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. You can head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you. It is OTA day. First day of OTAs. Football's in the air. We still got a long way to go before the season actually starts. But as I say on the show, you got these check boxes and you just mark them off with each milestone that you hit. In OTAs, they're a big milestone, right? Teams taking the field. We'll see who shows up, who doesn't. We'll get a little bit more into that in the final part of the show. But to me, we're going to get a lot of opportunities to listen and watch and hear about all these guys on the team that, maybe aren't the stars of the squad, but have a lot of opportunities to make noise and be contributors, because we know that it can't just be the stars that step up and give you those moments to propel you. You also need your depth to have big moments throughout the year as well. We talked about the offense in the first part of the show. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball. Let's start on the interior, defensive line-wise. I'm looking at Travis Jones as somebody, and look, I loved that pick for Baltimore when they made it back in 2022. It was crazy. He fell that far to the Ravens in the first place in the third round. He's someone that I expect to take a leap this season, and they certainly will need him to. But you also look at some of the other players on that line, like Broderick Washington. I think it's kind of, all right, it's time, Broderick. Like, the extension was signed. It hasn't really panned out. I think a lot of people were expecting bigger things, especially after that extension did get handed out. So I think, to me, Broderick has to have a bigger impact this season. I'm interested to see how he kind of performs and looks here. But then guys like Aeneas Peebles and honestly even John Jenkins, if he shows up. Like Nnamdi Madubuike, I'm not worried about Nnamdi. We obviously know he faced a lot more double teams last season. Teams were accounting for him, and that should open up more opportunities on the outside, which we'll talk about those guys in just a minute here. But I think, to me, Broderick Washington is almost like the X factor on this D-line. And I know that a lot of people will point to Travis Jones in that role. And I don't disagree with you there. But the difference to me between Travis and Broderick is that I think, to me, I'm expecting that leap from Travis, right? I think Travis is that talented where I'm already kind of penciling him in for that leap. Broderick, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to have that leap. And so that's where, to me, I think that's the X factor of the potential of this room. I think comes and goes with a guy like Broderick Washington, where I think the overall ceiling of it comes and goes with Travis Jones. That makes sense. That's where my mind is with that. Let's talk about those outside guys, though. You look at a player like a David Ojabo. That's the guy I've been talking about practically for the past couple of weeks as we've previewed OTAs and are leading up to the whole shebang with this. I think David Ojabo is someone that absolutely has to step up. His roster spot is not safe, in my opinion, and that can be due to a numbers game or just, unfortunate performances during the year. A lot of that obviously having to do with injuries, and that being another unfortunate part of his journey so far. But David Ojabo has a lot, and I mean it, a lot to prove here. Because you look at the roster right now, my sweet spot for outside linebackers is 5. And I obviously have Odafe Owe in that. I have Kyle Van Noy in that. Mike Green is not going anywhere. Tavius Robinson is a factor in there as well. And then Adisa Isaac. And that Robinson and Isaac are also guys I'm watching. But look, they're not getting rid of Tavius Robinson. I'll tell you that much right now. He's my pick for breakout player of the year for the Ravens, by the way. I've been on that for a while now, if you've been listening to the show. But then Adisa Isaac, it'd have to take something catastrophic for them to cut a third-round pick who didn't really get an opportunity last year in his second season, right? Before his second season even starts. To me, it's unfortunate Ajabo's career has turned out this way. He still has potential, in my opinion, but it's time. Right now is the time, because if they keep 6 outside linebackers, which is possible, you're going to have to maybe not be able to keep an extra offensive lineman, an extra member in your secondary. So those are the trade-offs of that. And, the roster can work in mysterious ways and things can kind of happen. And, maybe it works out how Ojabo does make it. And I hope that he does. I truly do. I hope that he has an awesome offseason workout period here. OTAs, minicamp, training camp, has a great preseason and forces the Ravens to keep him on this roster. But right now, if I had to give you my final roster, David Ojabo would not be on it. So I mentioned Tavius Robinson. I mentioned Adisa Isaac. Those are the 2 others I'm watching right now. Kevin Rucker's another guy who they signed a couple weeks ago. He's someone that could maybe make it as an undrafted free agent, but again, not on my roster because he would not fit into that 5 outside linebacker. I guess the five outside linebacker threshold that I have set for them. Inside linebacker, you know who it is. It's Trenton Simpson. It's Trenton Simpson. It's Trenton Simpson. Someone that has a lot to prove this year. Teddy Buchanan, I think, as a rookie, is going to make an impact. And by the way, one quick note, outside linebacker-wise, obviously I'm also looking at Mike Green. That's really exciting. I want to see what Mike Green's able to do. But back to the inside linebackers, Teddy Buchanan has a real shot to win that job next to Roquan Smith. Trenton Simpson is going to have to play really well because right now you kind of listen to the organizational messaging surrounding Trenton Simpson. It doesn't feel like they trust him a ton. So I think that spot next to Roquan, and again, how valuable is that spot? Are they going to use it a ton? Because you can obviously go heavy DB packages, dime packages, whatever you want to do there. It's not a necessity that you have 2 inside linebackers on the field at all times. But in that same breath, I do think that if you had a more consistent option and you're not scrambling like you had to last year if you're Baltimore, where it's okay, Malik Harrison and Chris Board and Kristen Welch, who's going to step up? If you have that solid option there, and plus with Trenton's athleticism, some of the stuff the covers, some of the stuff he brings to the table, he has a very valuable skill set. So I think I'm going to be laser focused in on Trenton Simpson to see what he can do in the secondary. I think to me, the guys that I'm looking at, obviously, it's Malaki Starks, right? Is a rookie. That's going to be a big role with Ardarius Washington going down, and that's a really unfortunate injury for the Ravens and for Ardarius as well, which we've talked about. Malaki is someone who is going to have even more on his plate, in my opinion, because of that injury. So him just flying around the field hopefully will be great. I'm interested to see Chidobe Awuzie if he shows up and how he's looking. Obviously, he's someone that gave the Ravens some fits in Cincinnati at times, but he's just had some bad luck with injuries. And so he's someone that is looked at as the Brandon Stephens replacement. We saw some Brandon Stephens clips from the Jets during OTAs, and he was, again, not turning his head for the ball, so nothing new there. There's your little Brandon Stephens update here on Locked On Ravens. But, again, I think Awuzie is an upgrade over Brandon Stephens, if not only for the fact that he'll turn his head for the ball. And, you look at a guy like Nate Wiggins as well, coming into year 2, was absolutely dominant as a rookie, and he'll hope to build on that. I think a guy also I'm really intrigued to see is TJ Tampa. TJ Tampa is someone that I think has an opportunity to secure a bigger role this season. Obviously, had bad injury luck last year and wasn't able to contribute a ton. And so he'll have to certainly earn a role, but that's someone that I'm intrigued to see. And plus, Baltimore drafted, it wasn't just Malaki Starks, multiple corners taken in this class for them. So those are also guys that I'm really intrigued to see. And then the special teams factor comes in. We'll talk about that in the final part of the show, as well as expectations for OTAs in general. So stay tuned. A lot coming up on the show. Back here, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still talking with you on OTA day. It's exciting. Everybody is taking the field, or at least some of these Ravens players will take the field. Obviously, I'm recording this before day one of OTA start, so I don't know who showed up and who didn't show up, but and I've talked about this. Ideally, everybody would show up, right? That is ideal. But I'm not going to blame a player when there is a voluntary workout to not show up. Like, if they don't want to show up, it's within their right to not show up. Now, when mandatory minicamp hits, and if they're not there, that's a different conversation. But while you would love to have everybody there, getting in work with the coaches, their teammates, new guys getting acclimated, we know these guys are working hard, doing their own workout training regimens, and whether they're doing that in silence without posting on social media or they're letting it be seen to the world. Either way, it's their preference. And so I'm sure we will see some of these vets show up, right? I wouldn't be shocked if guys like Roquan showed up. I wouldn't be shocked if Lamar showed up, right? I wouldn't. Now, if Lamar doesn't show up, I'm not going to come on here and flame Lamar, right? I'm just preparing everybody for that now. I know some people will. I will not be one of those people. I'm not going to blame anybody for not showing up to OTAs. Plus, OTAs to me is more for the young guys anyway. It's more for the young guys anyway. Does Lamar Jackson need OTAs? No. Does Derrick Henry need OTAs? No. Again, it's nice to be able to get the reps in. Every rep is valuable, and I'll stand by that. But if we're talking about, if Lamar Jackson misses reps in OTAs or the Ravens not going to win the Super Bowl, I personally wouldn't go that far. So that's my stance on that. And of course, as we get the list of guys who show up and don't, we will react to that here on the show. But let's talk about the special teams here. Obviously, we know long snapper, Nick Moore, that's their guy. Punter, Jordan Stout, he's someone actually I'm going to watch. Because Nick Moore, I'm totally fine with Nick Moore. Nick Moore is a beast. Nick Moore is awesome. Jordan Stout has had kind of an up and down career in Baltimore so far, right? Jordan Stout has not lived up to the expectations, I think, and certainly not to the player that he followed in Sam Cook, right? That, I think, is one of the bigger issues where I think everybody was so used to Sam Cook's greatness for so many years. And then, Jordan Stout comes in, who is unproven, and he has had great moments and he has had not so great moments. And on a contending team, that can be tough when they're trying to give rookies or young players leeway and runway, and it's costing you points or costing you games, right? And that can be tough. So I'm hoping for a big year from Jordan. He has an awesome leg. He has a ton of potential. But, I can't sit here and say he's been perfect as the Ravens punter. It's just not true. I think it's been a little underwhelming compared to the expectation. So Jordan's someone I'm definitely watching and rooting for and hoping he has a great year. That's not the biggest storyline. Come on. We know what the storyline is. It is the kicker position, and it's kind of the same thing. Justin Tucker departs after a decorated career on the field. Obviously, he leaves with the 2024 season that he had being pretty poor, in fact, terribly poor. And then obviously the off-field stuff following him as well. So Tyler Loop, their 6th-round pick out of Arizona, all eyes will be on Tyler Loop, right? My eyes will certainly be glued to Tyler Loop and everything that he is going to hopefully do for this Ravens team. And where does that start? Started for him in rookie minicamp, and now it is over at OTAs. There's a lot of pressure on Tyler Loop to follow in Justin Tucker's footsteps. And obviously, the Ravens have had success with kickers. Billy Cundiff before the incident. We're not going to talk about that incident, but Billy Cundiff before that was very good for the Ravens. They had Matt Stover, who obviously was nails for them for so long. And now Tyler Loop is the latest guy that is going to come in here and hopefully have that ability to be a clutch kicker for them with a big leg. We know he certainly has that leg. So, Tyler Loop might honestly be one of the bigger players to watch in all of OTAs. And honestly, minicamp, training camp, like all eyes will be glued to him because he's going to be put in plenty of pressure moments this season. The Ravens, while they certainly blow teams out, Lamar Jackson in that offense can get on you in a hurry. They will have those close games, maybe one to Pittsburgh or a high-scoring thriller against Cincinnati, high-charged AFC North games or high-charged divisional state games like that. Tyler Lewis will be put to the test. So again, there's only so much you can take away from OTAs without the contact. You obviously will get your drills and 7-on-7s and whatnot, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm excited to see a lot of these guys and figuring out, again, the first steps that they're taking in a team setting to be able to achieve their ultimate goal in winning the Super Bowl. So I think that for Baltimore, you're not going to necessarily say, okay, if a guy has one day of bad OTAs, it's over, it's done, see you later. Of course, we're not going to overreact to that. You got to stack days. You got to go with the good, live with the bad sometimes. There are going to be players that maybe their expectations for. You might get reports of that say, oh, well, this guy didn't look as fast, or he came into OTAs not as fit or a little overweight, whatever it is, and whoever that is, there's still months to go. It's crazy to think, right? I'm talking like it's training camp because obviously OTAs is the start. There's still months to go before the season actually kicks off. So, I'm excited to see a lot of these guys show up. Hopefully. If you're watching this after guys have showed up and, maybe you're watching this a little later in the day, well, then we'll react to that tomorrow. And you already know, before I do. This version of me, at least, before I do. So it's always kind of intriguing to go back. So again, if I had to predict, I personally don't think every player on the roster is going to show up, right? I don't think that that's super realistic. Now, it's possible. I'm not saying it's not. And if it is, I'll come on here tomorrow being very excited about it, very ecstatic. But, this is more for the younger players, for the rookies, for the second-year guys fighting for roster spots. And while I think it's important to have vets there to establish a tone, and I've said that over the years. If you've been listening to me for a while on the show, I've said that, and I stand by that. I still believe it. But the real work, it started a long time ago for these guys, right? It started the night the season ended in Buffalo, right? They have been working. They have been getting better, working on their craft. This has not just been, oh, all right, May 27th, OTAs are today. Let's start working out for next season. No, these guys have been putting in work. They've been trying to make their bodies right and take themselves to the next level. And that is not going to stop whether they are at OTAs or they are not. And then once mandatory minicamp kicks off, boom, now you got the whole team there, hopefully. There are some contract situations that are going to have to get ironed out. At least, you would hope a couple of them do. No guarantees on that, obviously, but we'll see if anybody is holding out or holding in, and we certainly saw some of that. I think the latest example, I think it was J.K. Dobbins, wasn't it, a couple of years ago when he held in for a deal, didn't work out for him, and then he got injured the first week of the season, which was just, I still feel so bad for J.K. about that. But OTAs are here. We have made it, and I am super excited about it. So that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in to the show. We'll be back here tomorrow talking about day one of Ravens OTAs, takeaways from that. If there are any to talk about, and certainly there will be. So we'll be here talking about them on Locked On Ravens and any other Ravens big storylines, as we always do. So on the way, I hit the like and subscribe button in video form, follow along in audio form, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.